I thought I was losing my mind when I woke up that Tuesday morning and walked into what used to be my living room. The silence hit me first, then the emptiness. Every single piece of furniture had vanished overnight. My grandmother's mahogany dining table, the rocking chair where I nursed my son Marcus as a baby, even the television stand my late husband built with his own hands. Gone. All of it. I stood there in my nightgown, bare feet on cold hardwood floors that had been hidden under Persian rugs just hours before. When I called Marcus, he answered from the airport with a casual cruelty that took my breath away. "She deserves Paris, Mom," he said about his new wife, Amber. I smiled into the phone and told them to have a wonderful trip, but inside my mind was already calculating their destruction. The empty house echoed with 25 years of sacrifice as I walked through each hollow room. After Marcus's father died in that construction accident when Marcus was just 8 years old, I became everything to my son. Mother, father, provider, protector. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, taking double shifts at the diner cleaning offices until midnight and selling cosmetics door to door on weekends just to pay for his baseball uniforms and school supplies. When Marcus got accepted to State University, I sold every piece of jewelry I owned, including my wedding ring, to help with tuition. I took out a second mortgage on this house, the same house my grandmother left me, filled with 4 generations of family memories. The dining room set where we held Sunday dinners, the china cabinet displaying my mother's wedding gifts, the oak bookshelf my husband crafted during long winter evenings when Marcus was small. I never remarried. Every man who showed interest got the same answer: Marcus comes first. And he did. Through high school girlfriends who didn't like sharing his attention through college years, when he barely called through his first job struggles when he moved back home for 6 months, and I cooked his favorite meals while he figured out his life. Then 6 months ago, Marcus brought Amber home. She was 26 to his 31 all-blonde highlights and perfectly applied makeup, constantly taking selfies and talking about her social media following. She had an opinion about everything in my house, suggesting I modernize or downsize or embrace minimalism. I bit my tongue and welcomed her with open arms because Marcus seemed happy. When they got married 3 months later in a courthouse ceremony, I gave them my master bedroom so they'd have more space and privacy. I moved into the smaller guest room, sleeping on a single bed like a teenager while they took over my home. I cooked elaborate meals that Amber picked at while live streaming her dinner to her followers. I did their laundry, finding receipts in Marcus's pockets for expensive restaurants and shopping trips I knew he couldn't afford on his delivery driver salary. "Mom, you don't understand Amber's world," Marcus would say when I gently questioned their spending. "She needs nice things for her image. It's an investment in our future." I watched my son transform from the boy who used to help me plant tomatoes in the backyard into a man who spoke to me like I was an annoying roommate. He'd have hushed phone conversations that stopped when I entered a room. Amber would roll her eyes when I asked about their day. They treated my home like a free hotel with maid service. The morning I discovered the theft started like any other. I woke up to use the bathroom around 6:30, my usual time. But something felt different. The house was too quiet. In a home filled with furniture, you hear familiar sounds: the old sofa creaking, the refrigerator humming behind cabinet doors, the gentle tick of my grandfather's mantel clock. Instead, I heard nothing but the sound of my own breathing. I padded down the hallway in my slippers, confused by how my footsteps seemed to echo. When I reached the living room, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. The space looked like a warehouse, bare walls, where family photos had hung empty corners, where furniture had created cozy conversation areas just yesterday. The dining room was even worse. The table where 3 generations of my family had shared holidays, birthday celebrations, quiet Tuesday night dinners had been replaced by nothing. The chairs my grandmother reupholstered during the Great Depression, the sideboard that held my mother's good china, the curio cabinet displaying my husband's baseball card collection all vanished like they'd never existed. I ran through every room, my panic growing with each empty space. The guest bedroom where I now slept still contained my furniture, but Marcus and Amber's room was completely cleared out. Not just my furniture, but their belongings too. Clothes suitcases, even Amber's makeup collection that usually covered half the dresser. That's when I found the note on the kitchen counter written in Marcus's familiar handwriting on a piece of notebook paper. Mom, we needed the money for our dream honeymoon. Amber deserves to see Paris and experience the world. You understand, right? We'll explain everything when we get back in 10 days. Don't worry about anything. Love, Marcus. My hands shook as I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring, airport announcements echoing in the background. Oh, good you found the note, he said cheerfully like we were discussing weekend plans. Mom, this is such an amazing opportunity for us. Amber's always wanted to see Europe, and when would we ever get another chance like this? Marcus, I whispered, my voice barely working. Where is my furniture? Where are my grandmother's things? We sold them to some dealers. Got a great price, too. Look, I know you're probably confused right now, but this is for the best. You have too much stuff anyway. It's not healthy at your age to be so attached to material things. My grandmother's dining room set, Marcus. Your grandfather's handmade bookshelf. These aren't just material things. They're family history. Mom, you're being dramatic. It's just furniture. We can buy new stuff when we get back. Cheaper stuff that's easier to move when you eventually downsize. The casual cruelty in his voice, the way he dismissed 60 years of my life as just stuff, hit me like a physical blow. I ended the call and sank onto the kitchen floor, the only room that still had a chair, and cried until I had no tears left. Later that afternoon, going through the pile of mail Marcus usually intercepted, I found something that stopped my crying and started my thinking. Bank statements and credit card offers addressed to me, but clearly opened and resealed. And at the bottom of the pile, a legal document with my signature that I definitely hadn't signed. A power of attorney form that would give Marcus control over my financial accounts. My tears dried up completely as I studied that forged signature. It was good but not perfect. The J in Jenny was too formal, too careful. I'd been signing my name for 67 years, and I knew how my hand naturally moved across paper. Marcus hadn't just robbed me while I slept. He'd been planning this for much longer than a spontaneous honeymoon. And as I sat alone in my empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of family memories, I realized my son had just made the biggest mistake of his life. I didn't sleep that first night in my ransacked home. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and pen making lists. Every piece of furniture I could remember, every family heirloom, every item that held meaning beyond its monetary value. By dawn, I had filled 8 pages with detailed descriptions, and my resolve had hardened into something unbreakable. The first stop was First National Bank, where I'd been a customer for 37 years. Sandra Wilson, the branch manager, knew me well enough to see something was wrong the moment I walked through the glass doors. Jenny, what can I do for you this morning? She asked, leading me to her private office. I need to check if anyone has tried to access my accounts, I said, sliding the forged power of attorney across her desk. I never signed this document. Sandra's professional smile faded as she examined the paperwork. Let me pull up your account history and check our security footage. Her fingers clicked across the keyboard, while I sat rigidly in the leather chair preparing myself for whatever I might learn. Jenny, I'm so sorry. Your son and a young woman matching your daughter-in-law's description were here yesterday morning. They presented this power of attorney and attempted to withdraw $15,000 from your savings account. My stomach dropped. Did they get the money? No, thank goodness. The signature looked suspicious to our teller, so we required additional verification. When they couldn't provide your driver's license or answer security questions about your account history, we denied the transaction. But Jenny, this is clearly forgery. We need to report this to the police. Sandra pulled up the security footage on her computer monitor, and I watched my son and daughter-in-law attempt to steal my life savings with the same casual confidence they'd shown selling my furniture. Amber wore a designer dress I'd never seen before, probably bought with money from my grandmother's china cabinet. Marcus gestured animatedly at the teller, his voice raised in the entitled tone he'd perfected over the past 6 months. There's more. Sandra continued, her voice gentle. They also inquired about the process for transferring property deeds and setting up estate planning services. Marcus specifically asked about guardianship procedures for elderly relatives with diminished mental capacity. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Diminished mental capacity. I'm afraid so. He suggested you'd been showing signs of confusion and memory loss, and that the family was concerned about your ability to manage your finances independently. I left the bank with copies of all the security footage and a promise from Sandra that my accounts were now flagged for additional security. My next stop was Riverside Antiques, the first dealer listed in Marcus's hastily discarded notes I'd found in his old bedroom. Frank Patterson, the shop owner, recognized my description immediately. Oh yes, the young couple from yesterday. Very eager to sell, wanted cash only. I bought a beautiful mahogany dining set, 6 chairs, and a matching sideboard. Exquisite craftsmanship from the 1940s. That was my grandmother's set, I said quietly. It's been in my family for 70 years. Frank's weathered face softened with understanding. Ma'am, I've been in this business for 40 years, and I can usually tell when something isn't right. Your son kept rushing me, saying they needed to clear everything out before you came home from the hospital. But the young woman, she was taking pictures of herself with the furniture posing for social media. Seemed odd for someone dealing with a family emergency. Did they say anything else? The woman mentioned something about finally getting rid of the old lady's junk so they could start their new life properly. Made me uncomfortable, but I see a lot of estate sales. Sometimes families don't appreciate the older generation's belongings. Frank gave me the contact information for the other 2 dealers Marcus and Amber had visited. By the end of the afternoon, I'd tracked down most of my stolen furniture scattered across 3 different antique shops. My husband's handmade bookshelf was at Treasures and Trinkets downtown. The rocking chair where I'd nursed Marcus was at Vintage Finds on Maple Street. Seeing my life's memories priced and tagged for sale to strangers felt like attending my own funeral. The total amount Marcus and Amber had received for my family's history was $47,000. Enough for their Paris fantasy, but nowhere near the actual value of what they'd destroyed. My grandmother's dining set alone was worth $15,000, but they'd sold it for $4,000 in their rush to catch their flight. On my way home, I stopped at Mrs. Patterson's house next door. Helen Patterson had lived beside me for 18 years, and she'd always been friendly, bringing cookies at Christmas and watching the house when I traveled. Jenny, dear, how are you feeling? She asked, genuine concern in her voice. Marcus told me about your recent episodes. He's such a devoted son to be so worried about your well-being. My blood turned cold. Episodes. The confusion spells wandering around the yard at night, forgetting conversations. He asked me to document anything unusual I noticed just to help track your symptoms for the doctors. Helen pulled out a small notebook from her kitchen drawer. I haven't seen anything myself, but Marcus was so concerned about your safety. I forced a smile. How thoughtful of him to involve you. What exactly did he tell you to watch for? Signs of dementia or Alzheimer's, memory loss, disorientation, inappropriate responses. He mentioned you'd been asking the same questions repeatedly and forgetting family members' names. He was considering having you evaluated by a specialist. The scope of Marcus's planning became clear as Helen showed me her notes. 3 weeks of entries documenting behavior that had never happened, conversations that had never occurred, symptoms that existed only in Marcus's manufactured narrative. He'd been building a case for my mental incompetence with the methodical patience of a predator. Back home in my echoing house, I found Marcus's old bedroom and searched through everything he'd left behind. Hidden behind his high school yearbooks, I discovered a folder that made my blood run cold. The folder contained printouts about elder abuse laws, guardianship procedures, and mental competency evaluations. Articles about how to recognize dementia, how to document erratic behavior, how to petition for conservatorship of an incompetent adult. There were handwritten notes in Marcus's familiar scrawl: establish pattern of confusion, document safety concerns, get medical evaluation scheduled. But the most devastating discovery was a draft legal petition already partially completed, requesting that Marcus be appointed as my legal guardian due to my advancing dementia and inability to care for myself safely. The document detailed alleged incidents of confusion, memory loss, and poor judgment that would justify removing my legal rights and giving Marcus complete control over my finances and living arrangements. At the bottom of the folder was a business card for Dr. Richard Hoffman Geriatric Psychiatry, with an appointment date scheduled for the day after Marcus and Amber's planned return from Paris. Someone had written, mental evaluation, $5,000 consultation fee paid in advance, in the margin. I sat on Marcus's old bed surrounded by the evidence of his calculated betrayal and felt something inside me change. The grief and shock were still there, but underneath grew something harder and more dangerous. My son hadn't just stolen my furniture or my money. He'd planned to steal my freedom, my dignity, my very identity as a competent adult. Marcus thought he was playing chess while I played checkers. He thought his old mother was too naive, too trusting, too weak to fight back against his sophisticated scheme. He was about to learn just how wrong he could be. I called in sick to my part-time job at the library for the rest of the week. For the first time in 25 years, I put myself first, and it felt like stepping out of shoes that had been too small for decades. My first call was to Bradley Investigations, a private detective agency I'd found online with excellent reviews for financial fraud cases. Tom Bradley, a retired police detective, agreed to meet me that afternoon at a coffee shop downtown. "Mrs. Henderson," he said, settling his large frame into the booth across from me, "tell me what's going on." I laid out everything: the stolen furniture, the forged documents, the planned competency evaluation, Marcus's history of manipulation. Tom took notes in a small black book, his expression growing grimmer with each detail. "This is elder abuse, plain and simple," he said when I finished. "And it's more common than people think. Adult children who see their parents as obstacles to inheritance rather than human beings deserving respect and care." "Oh, what can you find out about my daughter-in-law? I suspect there's more to Amber than she's told Marcus." "Give me her full name and social security number if you have it. I can run a comprehensive background check within 24 hours. That evening when Marcus called from Paris, I was ready with my performance. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you called," I said, injecting confusion into my voice. "I can't seem to remember where I put my reading glasses, and someone moved all the furniture around. It's very disorienting." "Mom, we talked about this before we left. Don't you remember? You said you wanted to redecorate, start fresh." "Did I say that doesn't sound like me? I love my grandmother's furniture. Where did it go?" There was a pause, Then Marcus's voice came back softer, more concerned. Mom, you're having another episode. Just rest and we'll sort everything out when we get home. Maybe you should call Mrs. Patterson if you feel confused. I played the role perfectly, asking the same questions twice, expressing bewilderment about simple things, even pretending to forget Amber's name. Each call reinforced Marcus's belief that his plan was working, that the stress of the furniture disappearing had accelerated my supposed mental decline. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. I photographed the empty rooms from multiple angles, printed copies of the forged power of attorney, and started a detailed journal of every conversation and discovery. I set up my old cassette recorder next to the phone to capture Marcus's calls, where he increasingly spoke to me like I was a confused child rather than the woman who'd raised him. Tom Bradley called Wednesday morning with preliminary results on Amber. Jenny, you're not going to believe what I found. Your daughter-in-law has been married twice before. First marriage ended with accusations of financial fraud. She emptied their joint checking account and disappeared, leaving her husband with $23,000 in credit card debt she'd run up. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. And the second marriage lasted 14 months. During that time, Amber convinced her husband to take out loans against his family's farm for her various business ventures. When the farm went into foreclosure, she filed for divorce and claimed she knew nothing about the financial arrangements. Oh, what about her social media career? She's always talking about sponsorship deals and brand partnerships. That's where it gets interesting. I found multiple complaints filed with the Better Business Bureau. Companies paid her for sponsored posts and product reviews that she never delivered. She's currently being sued by 6 different businesses for breach of contract. Total amount owed is approximately $53,000. The pieces click together like a lock opening. She needs money desperately. There's more. Amber has 3 outstanding warrants in different states for check fraud and identity theft. She's been using fake names and social security numbers to open credit cards and bank accounts. I hung up the phone and smiled for the first time since Tuesday morning. My son thought he'd married a social media influencer. Instead, he'd chosen a career criminal who saw him as her next mark. That afternoon, I drove to each antique dealer and began the process of buying back my family's belongings. I used my emergency savings account, the one Marcus didn't know existed, to negotiate, repurchasing everything at significantly higher prices than what he'd sold them for. I'll need to store everything in a warehouse until this legal situation is resolved. I explained to Frank Patterson as I wrote him a check for $7,000 to buy back my grandmother's dining set. Ma'am, if you don't mind me saying, your son doesn't deserve a mother like you. What he did was theft, plain and simple. I arranged for all my furniture to be moved to a climate-controlled storage facility across town. Seeing my belongings safe and protected felt like rescuing hostages from enemy territory. Thursday evening, Tom Bradley provided the final piece of the puzzle that transformed my sadness into righteous fury. Jenny, I need you to sit down for this. I found something that's going to shock you. I'm ready. I traced some unusual financial transactions from a bank account linked to Marcus's social security number. Large cash deposits going back 6 months, amounts that don't match his reported income from the delivery service. Where is the money coming from? That's what led me down a rabbit hole. The deposits are coming from Western Union transfers originating in Mexico. I did some digging and found the sender. Tom paused, and I sensed he was preparing me for something devastating. Jenny, the money is coming from someone named David Henderson. Same last name as you and Marcus. My world tilted. That's impossible. David is dead. My husband died 25 years ago in a construction accident. I found him, Jenny. He's alive and living in Puerto Vallarta under his real name. He's been sending Marcus money regularly, and according to financial records, they've been planning this scheme for over a year. The cassette recorder fell from my hands and clattered onto the kitchen floor. My husband, the father Marcus, grieved for the man I'd mourned and honored for a quarter-century, was alive. He'd faked his death, collected life insurance money, and abandoned his family to start a new life with another woman. And now he and Marcus were working together to steal everything I had left. I sat in my empty house that night, surrounded by the ghosts of 25 years of lies, and felt something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. The time for tears was over. The time for being the good mother, the understanding wife, the woman who always put everyone else's needs first, was finished. Marcus thought he was coming home to a confused, helpless old woman ready to be manipulated into signing away her freedom. Instead, he was walking into a trap that would destroy his life completely. And for the first time since Tuesday morning, that thought made me smile. Friday morning, I walked into the offices of Wells and Associates Attorney at Law, carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would have made a prosecutor weep with joy. Margaret Wells, a sharp-featured woman in her 50s who specialized in elder law, listened to my story with growing outrage. "Mrs. Henderson, what your son is attempting is not just elder abuse. It's conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, forgery. And if we can prove the systematic drugging, it's attempted kidnapping and assault." Systematic drugging? Margaret pointed to my documented phone calls, where Marcus expressed concern about my confusion and memory issues that started exactly 6 months ago when Amber moved in. Classic pattern: small doses of sedatives or other medications to create symptoms that support their narrative of mental decline. She helped me arrange for blood and hair follicle tests that would reveal any foreign substances in my system. Then she outlined a legal strategy that would not only protect my assets, but ensure Marcus faced serious federal charges. The forged power of attorney alone carries a prison sentence of up to 10 years. Combined with the elder abuse aspects and the fraudulent insurance claims involving your husband's faked death, we're looking at potential sentences of 15 to 20 years. Margaret also connected me with Carol Martinez from Adult Protective Services, who began building an official case file. Carol was a woman who'd clearly seen too much human cruelty in her career, but even she seemed shocked by the scope of Marcus's planning. "The fake mental competency evaluation is particularly disturbing," Carol said, reviewing the documents I'd found in Marcus's room. "We see this with increasing frequency. Adult children who manufacture evidence of their parents' incompetence to gain control of estates and properties." That afternoon, Tom Bradley provided updates that made my head spin with their implications. "I've been tracking Marcus and Amber's spending in Paris through their credit card statements," he said, spreading photographs across my kitchen table. "5-star hotels, Michelin-starred restaurants, shopping sprees on the Champs-Élysées. They've spent over $30,000 in 4 days." The photographs showed social media posts from Amber's accounts, her posing with expensive jewelry at Cartier designer handbags, from Louis Vuitton champagne dinners overlooking the Eiffel Tower. Each image was tagged with captions about living their best life and deserving luxury. "Here's the disturbing part," Tom continued. "I found email correspondence between Marcus and Dr. Richard Hoffman, the geriatrician who's supposed to evaluate you. Dr. Hoffman has been paid $5,000 in advance to provide a predetermined diagnosis of advancing dementia." My hands clenched involuntarily. He's never even met me. It gets worse. Dr. Hoffman has a history of providing questionable mental competency evaluations for families seeking guardianship of elderly relatives. The state medical board has investigated him twice for accepting payments in exchange for specific diagnoses. Tom showed me printed emails between Marcus and Dr. Hoffman discussing my symptoms and the need for immediate institutionalization for my own safety. They'd even discussed which psychiatric facility would accept me without proper legal authorization. Jenny, there's something else. I found evidence that Marcus has been intercepting your mail for months. Bank statements, credit card offers, even medical appointment reminders from your real doctor. He's been building a false narrative about your mental state while preventing you from accessing information that would contradict his story. The methodical cruelty of it took my breath away. While I was cooking Marcus's favorite meals and doing his laundry, he was systematically dismantling my reputation and preparing to have me disappeared. What about my real doctor, Dr. Sarah Chen, has been treating me for 15 years? That's our ace in the hole. I spoke with Dr. Chen yesterday. She's appalled by the allegations and eager to provide testimony about your perfect mental health. She's also agreed to administer cognitive tests that will prove your competency beyond any doubt. That evening, I drove to Dr. Chen's office for the most important medical examination of my life. She put me through extensive cognitive testing, memory evaluations, and psychological assessments that took over 2 hours. Jenny, your test scores are in the 95th percentile for your age group, Dr. Chen said, reviewing the results. You show no signs of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any cognitive impairment whatsoever. In fact, your mental acuity is exceptional for someone 30 years younger. She provided me with detailed medical records documenting my excellent cognitive health, along with a notarized statement that would demolish any claims of mental incompetence. The blood and hair follicle tests came back Saturday morning with results that transformed my anger into something much more dangerous. Positive for lorazepam and zolpidem, Margaret Wells said, reading the laboratory report. Both are prescription sedatives that cause confusion, memory loss, and disorientation when administered without the patient's knowledge. How long has this been going on? Based on the concentration levels in your hair follicles, approximately 6 months. Someone has been drugging you regularly with small doses designed to create symptoms of mental decline without causing obvious sedation. The timeline matched perfectly with Amber's arrival in my home. I thought back to all the times I'd felt unusually tired after dinner, the mornings when I'd struggled to remember conversations from the night before, the growing sense that my mind wasn't as sharp as usual. This is attempted murder, Jenny. Drugging someone without their consent with the intent to cause harm or incapacitation is a felony. Combined with the elder abuse charges, Marcus is looking at life-changing prison time. Tom Bradley's investigation had also uncovered Marcus's previous victims. His college roommate James Murphy agreed to testify about the $3,000 Marcus borrowed for emergency dental work and never repaid. His ex-girlfriend Rachel Stevens provided documentation of identity theft when Marcus forged her signature to lease a luxury car, destroying her credit score. There's a pattern going back years, Tom explained. Marcus has been manipulating and stealing from people who trusted him long before he targeted you. This isn't a desperate mistake. It's who he is. But the most devastating discovery came when Tom traced the connections between Marcus and his supposedly dead father. David Henderson has been living in Mexico under his real name for 25 years. Tom said, showing me photographs of a man I barely recognized. The David I'd married was lean and hard-working, with calloused hands and laugh lines around his eyes. The man in these photos was soft and pampered, living in a beachfront villa with a woman young enough to be his daughter. He collected $200,000 in life insurance benefits after faking his construction accident death. The money was split between 3 different offshore accounts, and he's been living comfortably ever since. Tom had traced phone records showing regular contact between Marcus and David going back 3 years. They've been planning this operation for a long time, Jenny. David's been coaching Marcus on how to manipulate you, how to build the case for mental incompetence, even which legal and medical professionals could be bribed to support their story. The scope of the betrayal was so vast it felt like discovering that my entire life had been a carefully constructed lie. The husband I'd mourned had been watching me struggle as a single mother while he sipped cocktails on Mexican beaches. The son I'd sacrificed everything for had been plotting to destroy me with the guidance of the father who'd already abandoned us both. But instead of despair, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades, pure focused rage that burned like clean fire in my chest. Sunday evening, I sat in my empty house and reviewed everything I'd gathered. Financial records, medical evidence, legal documents, witness statements, recorded phone calls, and photographic proof of a conspiracy that stretched back years. Marcus thought he was coming home to a confused, helpless woman, ready to be manipulated into signing her life away. Instead, he was walking into a coordinated operation involving the FBI, local police, adult protective services, and enough evidence to put him and everyone involved behind bars for decades. I set my alarm for Monday morning and went to sleep in my narrow guest bedroom bed, dreaming of justice served cold and complete. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that used to make me grateful to be alive. Today it felt like the universe was providing perfect weather for revenge. Margaret Wells called at 8 sharp with news that made my coffee taste sweeter than it had in months. Jenny, the FBI Financial Crimes Unit, is officially taking over the case. Agent Patricia Rodriguez will be your primary contact. They're treating this as part of a larger investigation into elder abuse networks and insurance fraud. Agent Rodriguez arrived at my house an hour later, a professional woman in her 40s who radiated the kind of competence that comes from years of catching criminals who think they're smarter than law enforcement. Mrs. Henderson, what your son and his accomplices have done represents a sophisticated, long-term conspiracy, she said, reviewing my evidence files. The systematic drugging, the forged documents, the fraudulent insurance claims, and the planned kidnapping under false medical pretenses add up to federal charges that carry decades in prison. She explained how the FBI would coordinate with local police to arrest Marcus Amber and their accomplices simultaneously. We'll have agents positioned around your house when they return. I want you to act normally, even encourage them to incriminate themselves further. Every conversation will be recorded. What about David? Mexican authorities are cooperating fully. He'll be arrested and extradited to face charges for insurance fraud, abandonment, and conspiracy. The life insurance money he stole will be recovered with interest. That afternoon, I worked with Tom Bradley to coordinate the return of my furniture from storage. We'll move everything back tonight after dark, he said. When Marcus and Amber walk into this house tomorrow, they need to see that their theft has been completely undone. I want them to understand that they never had any power over me, that every moment they thought they were winning, I was 10 steps ahead. As movers quietly restored my home to its original beauty, I felt like I was resurrection my own life. My grandmother's dining table returned to its place by the windows where 4 generations of my family had shared meals. The rocking chair where I'd nursed Marcus resumed its position by the fireplace, though it would never again hold memories of maternal love. The final touch was the hidden recording equipment FBI technicians installed throughout the house, tiny cameras and microphones that would capture every word, every expression, every moment of Marcus and Amber's final performance as free people. Tuesday afternoon brought the last piece of evidence that transformed my understanding of just how evil my son had become. Jenny, I need you to prepare yourself for this. Tom Bradley said, his voice unusually gentle. I found something that explains how Marcus has been making you appear confused and disoriented to your neighbors. He handed me a pharmacy receipt from 6 months ago. Marcus purchased Rohypnol and GHB from an illegal online pharmacy. These are date rape drugs that cause temporary amnesia and confusion. My hands shook as I read the itemized list. He's been drugging me with date rape drugs. The dosages were calculated to create specific symptoms without causing unconsciousness. He'd slip small amounts into your evening tea or dinner, then document your confused behavior to neighbors and potential witnesses. Tom showed me time-stamped photographs Marcus had taken of me during these drugged episodes. Images of me looking disoriented, staring blankly at the camera, appearing to have conversations that made no sense. Evidence manufactured to support his claims of my mental decline. There's more. I found videos on Marcus's laptop that he's been saving as evidence of your incompetence. Hours of footage showing you under the influence of drugs he administered, acting confused, and responding inappropriately to questions. The cruelty was so profound, it took my breath away. My son had been systematically poisoning me, then documenting the effects to justify stealing my freedom and dignity. The good news is that this evidence will guarantee conviction on the most serious charges. Drugging someone without consent with the intent to incapacitate them for criminal purposes carries a sentence of 15 to 20 years in federal prison. That evening, I prepared the welcome home dinner I'd been planning in my mind for days. Marcus's favorite pot roast, the recipe I'd perfected over 30 years of cooking for a son who no longer existed. Amber's preferred wine, the expensive bottle she'd requested for special occasions when she still pretended to appreciate my efforts. Everything was perfect. The dining room table set with my grandmother's china, the meal prepared with the same care I'd always shown my family, the house restored to its warm, welcoming state that had sheltered and nurtured Marcus through childhood and adolescence. The only difference was the small recording device hidden in my sweater pocket and the FBI agents positioned in unmarked cars throughout the neighborhood. Wednesday evening, Marcus called from Charles de Gaulle Airport. "Mom, we're boarding our flight home. We'll be there around dinner time tomorrow. How are you feeling?" I played my role one final time. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so confused. Someone returned all the furniture while I was sleeping. I don't understand what's happening." "Don't worry, Mom. We'll straighten everything out when we get home. Just rest and don't think too hard about things that confuse you. Will you stay for dinner tomorrow? I'm making your favorite pot roast." "Of course. We have a lot to discuss about your future living arrangements." I hung up the phone and smiled. Marcus thought he was coming home to complete his victory. Instead, he was walking into the last free evening of his adult life. Thursday morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. I put on my best dress, did my hair, and applied makeup with the care of someone preparing for the most important performance of her life. By evening, when I heard Marcus's key in the front door, I was ready. Mom, we're home," Marcus called out as the front door closed behind them. I heard Amber's designer heels clicking across the hardwood floor, then sudden silence as they processed what they were seeing. "What the hell?" Amber's voice carried clearly from the living room. "All the furniture is back. How is this possible?" I emerged from the kitchen wearing the same welcoming smile I'd perfected over 30 years of motherhood. "Marcus, sweetheart, Amber, darling. How was Paris? I made your favorite pot roast for dinner." Marcus stood frozen in the hallway, his face cycling through confusion, suspicion, and something that looked almost like fear. He'd expected to find a broken, confused woman in an empty house. Instead, our home looked exactly as it had before their theft, and I appeared completely normal. "Mom, where did the furniture come from? You were confused about it being gone when we talked yesterday." "Confused about what, honey? Come sit down and tell me about your trip. Dinner's almost ready." Amber grabbed Marcus's arm, her manicured nails digging into his sleeve. "Something's wrong here. The old lady is acting too normal." I ushered them into the dining room where my grandmother's table was set for 3 with the good china. The pot roast smelled perfect, filling the house with the aroma of home-cooked love that had defined so many family dinners over the years. Sit, I said, bustling around them like the devoted mother they expected me to be. You must be exhausted from traveling. Tell me everything about Paris. Marcus sat cautiously, his eyes scanning the room for clues to explain what he was seeing. Amber remained standing, her designer dress and expensive jewelry creating a stark contrast to the warm, family-centered atmosphere I'd carefully reconstructed. The Louvre was incredible, Amber said slowly, clearly trying to gauge my mental state. We saw the Mona Lisa and bought you a souvenir. She pulled a cheap snow globe from her purse, the kind sold at tourist stands for $5. How thoughtful, I replied, accepting the token with genuine warmth. Did you enjoy the shopping? You both look so elegant. Amber relaxed slightly, interpreting my response as continued naivety. Marcus spoiled me completely. Cartier, Louis Vuitton, the most amazing restaurants. We had champagne that cost more than most people make in a week. Wonderful, you deserve beautiful things, dear. As I served dinner, pouring wine and fussing over their comfort, Marcus's suspicion gradually gave way to relief. His mother was behaving exactly as she always had, welcoming and servile, apparently unaware that they'd funded their luxury vacation by stealing her family heirlooms. Mom, you seem much better than you did on the phone, Marcus said, cutting into his pot roast. Less confused? Oh, was I confused? Sometimes I don't remember our conversations clearly. Dr. Hoffman says that's normal at my age. Marcus and Amber exchanged glances across the table. This was the opening they'd been waiting for. Actually, Mom, we need to discuss Dr. Hoffman's recommendations, Marcus said, his voice taking on the patronizing tone I'd learned to recognize. He's very concerned about your ability to live independently. But I feel fine, sweetheart. A little forgetful sometimes, but nothing serious. Amber leaned forward, her expression predatory. Jenny, Marcus and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to consider a nice assisted living facility. Somewhere with medical professionals who can take care of you properly. You mean a nursing home? More like a senior community, Marcus said smoothly, with activities and other people your age. You'd be much safer there than rattling around in this big house alone. I let my face show confusion and hurt. But this is my home. I've lived here for 40 years. Mom, be reasonable. You can't maintain a house this size anymore, and with your memory issues getting worse, it's not safe. What if you forget to turn off the stove or lock the doors? Amber pulled out her phone, pretending to scroll through listings. We found some lovely places while we were in Paris. Modern facilities with excellent care. You could move in as early as next week. Next week. But what would happen to the house? Marcus reached across the table and patted my hand with false comfort. Don't worry about that. We'll handle all the details. The important thing is getting you somewhere safe. I allowed tears to form in my eyes. You want to sell my house? Mom, you'll be much happier in a place designed for seniors. Trust us to make the right decisions for your future. Amber's mask slipped slightly, revealing the cold calculation underneath. Besides, maintaining this property is expensive. The money from the sale could fund your care for years. How much money? Marcus and Amber exchanged another look, and I could see them making the decision to accelerate their timeline. The house is worth about $400,000, Marcus said. More than enough to cover your care and provide security for your future. 400,000? I repeated slowly. That's a lot of money. Which is why we need to act quickly, Amber added. The housing market could change at any time. I stood up slowly, moving toward the kitchen. Let me get dessert. I made your favorite apple pie, Marcus. As I busied myself in the kitchen, I heard their hushed conversation from the dining room. She's taking this better than expected, Amber whispered. The drugs are working perfectly. She's compliant but not completely gone. We need to get her to sign the papers tonight before she has time to think about it. What about the competency evaluation? Dr. Hoffman will provide whatever documentation we need. $5,000 buys a lot of medical opinion. I returned with the pie, my hands steady despite the rage burning in my chest. Here we are. apple pie with vanilla ice cream. As we ate dessert, Marcus pulled out a folder of legal documents. Mom, we brought some paperwork for you to sign. Just formalities to make the transition easier. The documents included power of attorney transfers, property deeds, and medical directives that would give Marcus complete control over my life and assets. This all looks very official, I said, reviewing the papers. Should I have a lawyer look at these? There's no need for that expense, Amber said quickly. Marcus researched everything thoroughly. These are standard forms. Besides, Marcus added, we need to move quickly if we want to get you into the best facility. The paperwork has to be filed tomorrow. I picked up a pen, my hand hovering over the signature line. This says you would have power of attorney over all my finances and medical decisions. Just a precaution, Mom, in case your condition worsens and you're not able to make decisions for yourself. And this document transfers ownership of the house to you temporarily until we can arrange the sale and get you settled in your new home. I set down the pen and looked at my son with clear, focused eyes. Marcus, do you remember when you were 8 years old and your father died in that construction accident? Marcus nodded, confusion flickering across his features. Do you remember how I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat? How I sold my wedding ring to pay for your baseball equipment? How I took a second mortgage on this house to help fund your college education? Yes, Mom, but what does that have to do with... Do you remember when you brought Amber home 6 months ago and I welcomed her like a daughter? How I gave you my bedroom and moved into the guest room, like a tenant in my own home? Amber shifted uncomfortably. Jenny, we appreciate everything you've done, but... I stood up, my voice growing stronger and clearer with each word. Do you remember last Tuesday morning when you sold all my furniture while I slept and left me a note explaining that you needed money for your Paris honeymoon? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus's face went pale. Mom, you're confused again. We explained about the furniture. I remember everything, Marcus. Every forged signature, every drugged cup of tea, every lie you told the neighbors about my mental capacity. I reached into my sweater pocket and pulled out the small recording device, placing it on the table between us. I remember the systematic way you've been poisoning me with Rohypnol and GHB for 6 months. I remember the fake power of attorney documents and the bribe doctor who was going to declare me mentally incompetent. I remember the illegal psychiatric facility that was going to accept me without proper authorization. Marcus jumped to his feet, knocking over his wine glass. What are you talking about? You're having another episode. And most of all, I continued, my voice carrying the weight of 25 years of betrayal. I remember discovering that your father, who I mourned for 25 years, is alive and living in Mexico, where he's been coaching you on how to destroy me. Amber grabbed Marcus's arm. We need to leave, now! There's nowhere to run, I said calmly. FBI agents have been recording this entire conversation. They're positioned around the house, and Mexican authorities arrested David 3 hours ago. The front door burst open and Agent Rodriguez entered with a team of federal agents, their weapons drawn. Marcus Henderson and Amber Stevens, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and attempted kidnapping. As handcuffs clicked around Marcus's wrists, he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, complete and utter shock. You can't do this to me, he said, his entitled confidence crumbling. I'm your son. I walked over to him close enough to see his eyes clearly for perhaps the first time in years. No, I said quietly. You're a stranger who shared my home and ate at my table while planning to destroy my life. My son died the moment you decided I was worth more to you as a victim than as a mother. As they led Marcus and Amber toward the door, Amber turned back with venom in her voice. You stupid old woman. You have no idea what you've done. Marcus will never forgive you for this. I smiled, feeling truly peaceful for the first time in months. I hope he lives long enough in prison to understand exactly what he's lost, The house fell silent as the last agent left, leaving me alone with the restored furniture, the family photographs, and the overwhelming sense that justice had finally arrived. The trials began 6 months later, and I attended every single day of proceedings, watching from the gallery as the full scope of Marcus and Amber's conspiracy unfolded in excruciating detail. Amber was tried first, and her criminal history created a devastating picture of a career predator who specialized in targeting families through romantic manipulation. Her previous victims testified about jewelry theft, credit card fraud, and elaborate schemes that left elderly relatives financially and emotionally destroyed. The defendant represents a clear pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable family members, Prosecutor Janet Mills said in her closing argument. She weaponizes trust, affection, and family bonds to systematically destroy the lives of those who welcome her into their homes. The evidence against Amber was overwhelming. Credit card receipts from her Paris shopping sprees, social media posts, bragging about her luxury lifestyle funded by stolen furniture money, text messages between her and Marcus discussing my planned institutionalization, and testimony from her previous victims who described identical schemes spanning 5 states over 8 years. When the guilty verdicts came back on all 12 felony counts, Amber finally showed emotion, collapsing in tears as the judge sentenced her to 15 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for the first 8 years. Marcus's trial was more difficult for me to watch because despite everything he'd done, part of me still remembered the little boy who used to help me plant tomatoes and asked for extra bedtime stories. But that mercy dissolved as prosecutors revealed the true depth of his betrayal. The drugging evidence was particularly damning. Video recordings Marcus had made of me under the influence of illegal sedatives, showing a confused, disoriented woman who bore no resemblance to my actual mental state. Medical expert Dr. Patricia Morgan testified that the systematic administration of date rape drugs over 6 months could have caused permanent neurological damage or death. This defendant didn't just steal his mother's furniture, Prosecutor Mills explained to the jury. He attempted to steal her mind, her legal rights, her freedom, and ultimately her life. The psychiatric facility he arranged would have accepted her without proper legal authorization, meaning she could have disappeared completely. The financial evidence painted a picture of long-term planning and stunning greed. Marcus had been intercepting my mail for over a year, researching my assets, and coordinating with his supposedly dead father to plan the perfect elder abuse scheme. When David Henderson was extradited from Mexico, his appearance shocked me. 25 years of comfortable living on stolen life insurance money had transformed my once hardworking husband into a soft, entitled stranger who showed no remorse for the destruction he'd caused. "Your Honor," David said, when given the opportunity to address the court, "I made mistakes, but I never intended for things to go this far." Judge Patricia Williams, a woman in her 60s who clearly understood the gravity of elder abuse crimes, showed no patience for his self-serving explanations. "Mr. Henderson, you faked your own death, collected $200,000 in fraudulent life insurance payments, and abandoned your wife and 8-year-old son to pursue a comfortable lifestyle in Mexico. When that money began running low, you coached your son on how to systematically destroy the woman who had raised him alone for 25 years. David received 22 years in federal prison with restitution orders that would recover every penny of stolen insurance money plus interest and penalties. Dr. Richard Hoffman, the corrupt geriatrician who had agreed to provide false mental competency evaluations, lost his medical license and received 8 years for accepting bribes and participating in elder abuse conspiracy. But Marcus's sentencing was the moment I'd been waiting for since that terrible Tuesday morning when I discovered my empty house. "Mr. Henderson," Judge Williams said, looking directly at my son as he stood in shackles before the bench. Your crimes represent a level of betrayal that strikes at the foundation of family trust and human decency. You systematically drugged, manipulated, and planned to kidnap the woman who sacrificed everything to raise you alone after your father's supposed death. The judge reviewed each charge methodically: elder abuse conspiracy to commit fraud forgery, illegal drugging, attempted kidnapping, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The court sentences you to 23 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 12 years. You will also pay full restitution for all stolen property, medical expenses related to the drugging, legal fees, and punitive damages totaling $417,000. As Marcus was led away in chains, he looked at me one final time. I saw no remorse in his eyes, only anger that his carefully planned scheme had failed. The restitution money, combined with the recovered life insurance fraud proceeds and the sale of David's seized Mexican assets, gave me financial security I'd never imagined possible. But more importantly, it gave me the resources to ensure that what happened to me would never happen to other families. I used the settlement money to establish the Henderson Foundation for Elder Protection, a nonprofit organization that provides legal assistance, investigation services, and emergency shelter for seniors facing family-based financial abuse. We've helped over 200 families in the past 2 years, and our success rate in prosecuting elder abuse cases is 93%. The foundation also funds research into the drugging methods used by family predators and provides training for medical professionals to recognize the signs of systematic poisoning designed to create false symptoms of mental decline. Last month, I received a letter from Marcus in prison. I threw it away without opening it, just as I'd done with the previous dozen letters he'd sent. Whatever excuses, justifications, or pleas for forgiveness he wanted to offer, I wasn't interested in hearing them. Some people might think I should feel guilty about destroying my son's life, or sorry for the prison sentence that will keep him incarcerated until he's in his 50s. But every time doubt creeps into my mind, I remember the videos he made of me while I was drugged, the fake medical evaluation he arranged, and the psychiatric facility that would have accepted me without proper legal authorization. Marcus didn't make a mistake or succumb to temporary weakness. He spent over a year systematically planning to erase me from existence while I cooked his meals and washed his clothes. Today I live in a beautiful cottage by the ocean, surrounded by my rescued furniture and new friends, who appreciate my strength rather than exploit my kindness. I volunteer at the foundation 4 days a week, helping other families navigate the legal and emotional complexities of elder abuse prosecution. Mrs. Patterson, my former neighbor, visits regularly, and we laugh about how she unknowingly helped document Marcus's lies. She's become one of my closest friends and a strong advocate for elder rights in our community. Tom Bradley, the private investigator who helped uncover the conspiracy, has become the foundation's chief investigator. Margaret Wells serves as our primary legal counsel. Agent Rodriguez frequently speaks at our training seminars for law enforcement officers. Last Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner for 12 people, elder abuse survivors, foundation staff, and chosen family members who understand that blood relation doesn't guarantee love or loyalty. My dining room table, the same one Marcus tried to sell for quick cash, was laden with food, laughter, and genuine affection. As I looked around at faces filled with gratitude, respect, and hard-won wisdom, I realized that Marcus had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible. By showing me what I was worth to him as a victim, he forced me to discover what I was worth to myself as a survivor. The foundation's motto, carved into a wooden plaque above my mantelpiece, comes from something I said during my first television interview about elder abuse awareness. The people who should protect us sometimes become our greatest threats. but we always have the power to fight back. I never married again, but I'm not alone. I'm surrounded by people who value my intelligence, appreciate my experience, and respect my boundaries. I sleep peacefully in my ocean cottage knowing that hundreds of other seniors are safer because I refuse to become a victim. Sometimes I think about the Tuesday morning that changed everything when I woke up to an empty house and discovered the depth of my son's betrayal. That moment could have destroyed me, turned me into a cautionary tale about trusting the wrong people. Instead, it became the beginning of the most meaningful chapter of my life. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to rebuild your life and protect yourself from future harm? I'd love to hear your stories of survival and recovery in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help spread awareness about elder abuse, subscribe to our channel for more stories of justice and empowerment, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear that it's never too late to fight back against those who would exploit our trust. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting the fight against elder abuse. Remember, you are stronger than you know, and you deserve to be treated with respect and dignity regardless of your age. Until next time, stay strong, stay vigilant, and never let anyone convince you that you don't have the power to protect yourself. The fight for justice is never easy, but it's always worth it. And sometimes the greatest revenge is simply refusing to remain a victim.